we're gonna go to our next session, ladies and gentlemen. So we just took sessions from United States, heading to India, and here in Bahrain, and now we're gonna go all the way to Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, with us here today, we're gonna be having a talk about the hybrid working environments, home and office working. So ladies and gentlemen, with us here today is the best-selling author and executive coach, all the way from Germany, Mr. Peter Ivanov. Mr. Peter, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you guys, large global audience. My presentation starts with 5 words, which 50 years ago have casted the world in fear and hope, which are still a symbol of the unexpected that calls for urgent action, which for free men and their families meant 1 week struggle for life or death. These 5 words are: Houston, we have a problem. Imagine the year is 1970, by the way, the year when I was born. Precisely it is 11th of April and the clock in Houston shows 13:13. Precisely in this moment in time, the American Space Agency NASA shoots the spaceship Apollo 13 to the moon. The experts plan to land on the moon in 4 days. On the 3rd day, April the 13th, there is a loud crash and the 3 astronauts see how white powder flows into the space. This is their oxygen. 2 from their 3 oxygen tanks have just exploded and their entire oxygen flows into the space. The Houston Control Center is in panic. No one has ever planned with such a disaster. The families of the 3 astronauts are completely horrified. How many of you have seen the film Apollo 13? Just please let me know in the chat, yes or no. If this here is the Earth and this here is the moon, on the 3rd day, April the 13th, they are here very close to the moon when the explosion happens. Thanks for your responses on the chat. If they continue flying according to the plan, they have energy until here, somewhere, as you see, between the Earth and the moon, but not enough to reach the gravity on the Earth and so to be pulled on the Earth's surface. It is clear now that the mission landing on the moon has failed. All already planned geological or lunar research has been blown away by this explosion. Now the life of the astronauts is at stake. Now it is a matter of life or death. In the Houston Control Center, there is one man in charge, the 37-year-old Gene Kranz. He, with his short and flat haircut, he looks you always into the eyes and acts tough but competent. Gene grasps immediately that in order to save the life of the astronauts, he has to win one fight. The fight for energy. Energy in the space is everything. You need energy in order to move the spaceship, in order to navigate it, and also to communicate with the Earth. Now, every energy unit, every single amp has a life meaning. Now they need a miracle. What does Gene Kranz do in this historical moment? He gathers his entire Houston team in one room. The room boils from anxiety and nervousness. The heads are challenged, the ideas rush around, the hearts are full with care, fear, and hope. Gene listens each and every one very carefully. At one point, he calls for silence. Then he pulls all these people spread around the space together. Everyone, the 3 astronauts in space, the Houston Control Center, scientists, engineers, hundreds of people. Gene says, we haven't lost a man in space until now. And as long as I'm responsible, no one stays there. Failure is not an option. He succeeds to pull all these people spread around the space through a magical gravity force in one strong virtual team. One team aligned towards one goal, to save the lives of the astronauts. These are 7 days full with incredible character strength, genius feats of engineering. Among others, they build a CO2 converter into the spaceship, but above all, an extraterrestrial triumph of leadership. On the 17th of April, the land capsule of Apollo 13 lands, or rather splashes into the Pacific, and the 3 astronauts are rescued. This is a miracle. This is virtual power. This is a virtual power team. Now, why I'm telling you this story? How many of you have worked on a project where you have an unexpected change in the middle? Just let me know in the chat, please. Yes, feel free to use the chat for panelists and everyone. Now, I personally heard the statement, Houston, we have a problem. Yes, thank you. More than once in my career. Luckily, it was never life and death, but for the project, it was quite critical. And Corona now challenges us all to work remotely. We responded well in a good digital skills, like this perfectly organized conference. But the longer this period lasts, the longer we need to set goals remotely. We need to resolve conflicts remotely. We need to establish a structured communication, not just update meetings, and we need to maintain the winning spirit. And for this, we need a system. And this is what I would share with you today, a systematic approach to build power teams despite the distance. Now, I was 20 years IT manager, leading big teams, first leading big projects, then leading the European project delivery unit, 30 project managers in Europe, and last job, IT services manager for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I had a chance firsthand to lead large teams, 100+ people in different countries, different continents, in different time zones, and from various cultures. And from this experience, I developed this method called virtual power teams. And what motivates me last 8 years, I decided to follow my dream job and become a motivational speaker. What motivates me to carry on is that it works. For example, we delivered a 2 years project involving 20 countries in Europe, building global shared services, finished 3 months early and saved 250,000 euro. Or another 1 billion euro project involving Alibaba in e-commerce, finished on time and had 80 million profitability. So we'll share about these case studies a bit later. And last 8 years, following my dream job, I work with 100+ clients, most of them multinationals, where we make their global team work and going from productivity for faster project delivery, but also some mid-size and family businesses where we aim to build power teams, not just within the organization, but also integrating key partners and suppliers and building power team beyond the organizational boundaries. And even if you look, there are some education and even NGOs without a boss, without salary, and still applying the same principles, we got great results. Now, from all these experiences, I can tell that the virtual team is like the atom, where you have a nucleus and then you have various particles flying around. In the virtual team, we aim to retain the gravity despite the distance. The gravity between the individual team members, which are the particles, towards the nucleus. But the nucleus is not the manager or the HR manager. This is the purpose and goal of the team. So you will see we put a lot of emphasis to set the goal bottom up. Now, let me ask you a question. I'd love this session to be interactive. Now we have a limited opportunity to interact. Usually do this on the whiteboard where you could co-create and 200 people can put together, but there is a research and we've seen a lot from Gallup, from Mohammed. Now, what do you think are the top reasons for global teams to fail? Please let me know in the chat. Why global team fails or multicultural international team fails? Well, some of you typing, so because the time is very limited, yes, poor communication streams. Communication is a big time, including language, multicultural, time zones, unclear goal. Excellent. Lack of trust or loss of trust. Fantastic input, guys. So according, that's not Gallup, that's I think Forrester in this case. Number one, as you rightly said, they fail to build trust. Number two, they cannot overcome communication barriers, as you rightly said. Number three, the goal of the individual is not aligned with the team goal. So there is a nucleus, there is a goal for the team, but individual goals sometimes misaligned. And third one, the team goal and vision, the nucleus itself is not clear. Now, the virtual power team comprises of the 10 big rocks. The 10 big rocks are the 10 success factors for retain the gravity and unleash the team power. And let me go through the 10 big rocks quickly. Now, if you imagine your team as a human being, the first part, the 10 big rocks are broken down into 3 parts. And the first part is the logical, the cognitive part, the head of the human being, your team. So here we're talking about personality and focus. Some managers say, don't see the people, why should I bother? What are they as individuals? I'll give you effective formats to crack this and go intimate. Second, strength matrix. In a poorly led teams, people feel anonymous, just like a resource. Here we will discover the natural strengths and talents, and Gallup have the strengths finder. And this is in a more pragmatic online approach, a quicker and faster approach. And we will put them in a strength matrix. And when people see all the talents and strengths within the team, the new feeling emerges. Instead of anonymous, a new feeling that with all these strengths, we could achieve any goal that we set to ourselves. And the third one is interdependent goals. So here we are aiming for clarity. Who is a member of the team and what is the goal of the team, the nucleus? The second part is like the dynamic part, the body and muscle. So here we're talking about forums and agenda, which meetings, which online conferences your team need, knowledge management, and we link it to the strengths, we define knowledge champions, and then regular feedback, sometimes scarce in local teams and even more in virtual teams. So here we are establishing a structured communication, not a manager-centric or problem-centric, like in poorly led teams, the manager calls a meeting and if there is a problem, starts some finger pointing, or he dominates the discussion, speaks most of the time. A structured communication where everyone can contribute and shine. And the third one, my favorite, is the heart. So here we're talking about recognition. Probably know the number one reason as HR people for people leaving companies. They leave bosses, lack of recognition from their direct superior. So here we'll see how to recognize, despite the distance, diversity. If you have a multicultural team, how to build the optimal team culture, and then how to maintain the winning spirit, despite the distance. So here we are building the optimal virtual culture. And the 10th one I keep as a surprise a bit for the end. So we will touch upon in different level of detail in all this. Now, people ask me how to protect your intellectual property, because I'm a numbers guy, I'm a mathematician, master of mathematics. Why don't you write a book? I wrote a book, which is a story actually. I said, if I write a book, it won't be a typical management book. And for my delight, it's been translated in the last 2 years in 6 languages, including, English, German, Chinese, Spanish, and so on. Not yet Arabic. Maybe it's an opportunity. And for 1 week, it was Amazon top 3 in the category international management. Just for a week, but I keep the screenshot dear to my heart. Now, that's, by the way, the new book, which now in Corona times, I wrote it for 2 months only. I poured out my heart in a video, get it transcribed, and now it's been published by Wiley. And here we are going beyond the organizational boundary, as we said, not just within the organization, but with your key suppliers, partners, sometimes building global communities. Question to you. If we define a virtual team as a team which is in more than one location, 2 offices in the same country, or home office workers on a regular basis, like Corona scenario, how many are the virtual teams globally in percentage? Let me know in the chat. We could have done a poll, but just let me know in the chat. And thank you for our active participation in the chat. So how many? What's the percentage of the virtual teams globally? 45? Thank you, Pam. 60, 30, so variety, 50, yep. 70, yeah, we're going up. 20, 25, apparently Middle East probably are a bit less than average. So I'm not sure if Gallup has a statistic for that, with COVID about 90%, but the Forrester research, and this study is 4 years old, perhaps they put a bit more, they are 81% globally. And 60% of them are in different time zones, so quite dispersed international teams. Now we've seen the reasons for failure. Let's see now Google, as a big data company, they decided to see what their best performing teams have in common. What is the one characteristics that they all best performing teams have in common? And they have data for everything, for us as consumers, but also for themselves. So they researched, not sure how many of you know Project Aristotle, let me know, yes or no. Could research it. They research it. During their research, they find out that their best performing team, they have an equal share of talking. Like introverts manage to, to shut up. Extroverts manage to shut up. Introverts manage to speak up at some point in time. So they end up with almost nearly equal share of talking. But then they saw that there are some exceptions, not all of them. And they continued to research. And do you know what they discovered? The number one characteristic that without any exception, all their team has? Please, if you know, put it on the chat or put your guess. So they called it psychological safety, which means their team members feel safe enough to take risks. Take risks, not being afraid that if they fail, they will be laughed at, or they will be will have a negative consequences for their career. They take risks and they can show vulnerability. So not just show their perfect side as we do on social media, but also show their weaknesses and ask for help and offer help. So psychological safety, by far the number one reason that all high-performing teams in Google, and probably not only in Google, have. Now, question to you, how do you feel in your virtual team? Just let me know on the chat. What is the first emotion that comes to mind or to heart when you think of your virtual team right now in the middle of pandemic? Yes, disengaged, said Muhammad. My first trustworthy. I feel bad, some trustworthy. It's always you have. And that's important, as also Mohammed was mentioning, asking about the feeling is key, because people in different locations now in the lockdown come from completely different, perspective and context. And establishing this and seeing how everybody feels, the level of, you can expect the level of participation, you could, adjust your expectations. Now, as I said, 2000, my dominated feeling was frustration. Our boss based in London, we had once a year a face-to-face meeting, once a quarter phone conference. And in these meetings, mainly he has spoken, presented various KPIs and business results. Rarely we spoke, but that was without a clear recognition. And after such meeting, we rarely spoke to each other and even less helped each other. So briefly said, it was frustration and pain for us as well as for our manager. And from this experience, I know that poorly led virtual teams, they lose gravity over time. Their team members get lost in space, and that deteriorates the team performance. And I ask myself the question, how can you retain the gravity and unleash performance, even, improve it even exponentially? And those teams that manage to do that, I call them virtual power teams. So let's start building them. By the way, I'm a father of 5 girls. No joke, 1 wife, 1 marriage, 5 girls. Apparently that's the only thing I can. And they're still little, still at home in a hectic face-to-face period. But once they leave, and the older one was already on a student exchange, we become a virtual family. So the next book project will be cracking the code of the virtual power family. Now, a bit of a personal introduction. Every time I'm appointed as a manager of a new team, and now as a coach, I invite all my direct reports, the leadership team, on a 2-day workshop. And the first half day I dedicate to personal introductions. I ask them to present themselves with their life journey, the moments, their highlights, the moments of excellence, the moment they are most proud of, but also the moments where it was difficult, but nevertheless they managed to overcome. And if you invite people to present themselves from this perspective, you will be amazed. Within 5 to 10 minutes, you find out what makes the heart of each and everyone sing. And not just you, because as a smart manager, we do this during recruitment, everyone finds about everyone else. And you plant the seed of interpersonal relationships, and later on you will see we maintain it through structured communication. Picture is more than 1,000 words. We know that. This is Oscar, lives in Madrid and weighs 9 kilos. So particularly now digital scale-ups, they can never meet personally. Ask them to present themselves with a picture that they identified with or find funny. You will be amazed. It opens the window to their soul. And the last tip, very practical. These are the 4 magic questions. If we had more time, we would have done breakout rooms. This question worked miracles to break the ice and build rapport. And 2 of them are easy. But the other 2, they require to pick what you say, to show vulnerability. And exactly this kind of subconsciously start building rapport and trust. If you as a manager provide time and space, trust from my perspective is a function of 2 things. Personality, how well and how deep your team members know each other as human beings, and professional competence. And if you as a manager provide time and space for these 2 aspects to unfold, you build trust. And this is the fundament for your success as a team. Now, in the presentation, there are some questions for self-coaching, self-reflection. Happy to do it. Strength matrix, I will briefly go through it. I asked them to list their top strengths, and I'm a big fan of strengths-oriented management, strengthening the strength instead of developing the weaknesses. And Gallup, they have the strengths finder exactly based on this philosophy. So I asked them to list the strengths. Some of them come with a list of 100 strengths. I explained that this is not a strengths competition. For those who struggle, there are 5 magic questions, and we do it in a peer coaching format. So they coach each other online, asking this question: what is easy and fun to do in your job? What was your biggest success? What are people asking you, coming to you and asking for help? And if you ask your best friend, what is your biggest strength, what he say? So in this way, you capture 2 strengths, your individual strength, internal, and the coach will give you the external perspective. And when we put them together in a strength matrix, and we put even avatars, famous people that have these strengths, a new feeling emerges that with this bouquet of strengths, we could achieve anything. Just let me give you a short example. How many of you know what is MOOC? MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. A client in New York ran MOOCs. He gathers 35,000 students. But his problem was that he was teaching modern architecture. And not to be dry, they built resilient schools for Philippines. Sure, we have some people from Philippines. When the tsunami destroyed the environment, the infrastructure, government decided to build a school in such a resilient way So they will be schools in normal times, but they will provide shelter in case of disaster. So 6 weeks, he was giving them input through video and they were building these resilient schools. When the week 5 come, the critical one, people started dropping out. Learn enough for free, dropping out. Why for free? He was collecting the money in the end when they successfully submit the design and get the certificate. Tried to collect the money up front, only 2,000 people subscribed. So with his team of professors, we had a coaching and we agreed to break them in a teams of 5. Not us, it's a mammoth task. Self-organized, get together in the teams of 5, based on time zone, proximity. They presented themselves with a lifeline. They discovered their strengths. And based on that, they were building just one school, these 5 people, splitting the work based on the strengths. And when the critical week 5 came, they just couldn't let their teammates down. There was so much gravity already created. So 27,000 people stayed in the end, and he had 470,000 revenue improvement. So personality in focus can foster gravity and bring results. Interdependent goals, very brief. In the book, it describes in the detail. How many of you work on a project where you give everything, but the other team members are not so motivated? So if this is the case in a virtual scenario, it's even more likely. Just I don't pick up the phone every time I can, or I delay some emails. Here I'm frustrating the other team members and hiding behind the virtual corner. So to tackle this, I would break down the goals, the vision of the team in so many goals that everyone on the leadership team or your core team will have his or her own strategic goal. And there is a process, 3-step process, discovering the hot issues, turning them into the SMART goals and building the strategic roadmaps. As key is that you don't delegate, but people voluntarily pick from the strategic roadmaps. So micromanagement and control is not an option. Let them pick their goal. In this way, you ensure the nucleus is set bottom up and the goals individual aligned with your nucleus. Forums and agenda, the second part. Now, let me be brief here. So it is key to have 2 times a forums. So when I ask the people, how often do we have? Sometimes they say once a month. Particularly senior managers, they have their own teams. I would challenge them, let's say let's start once a week. And if this is too much, we will adjust it. And I'm getting like 60, 70%. That was in my managerial times as a manager. But towards the end of the first month, we get 90 to 100% attendance and we remain there. What is the secret? The secret is not what you hear. It's not what you see. And I'm a big supporter of having the visuals, but what you do. So we break down the agenda in as many sub slots, so everyone will have his or her own slot. And we start with a 2 minutes personal update, like what's my record in half marathon or how it tastes red wine from Chile, and then structured, what have I achieved, just milestones, what stays in my way, who can help me out. Once a month, it's not additional meeting, different format, it's formal. Everybody takes part by video and everyone present the progress on his strategic goal, remember, from the interdependent goals. And here I invite the next organizational layer on this formal one, the extended leadership team, or if you're a smaller business, you have key partners, your key partners or key interfaces within your organization. And in order not to be bored today, they ask questions. And in the end, we would answer the question. We would allow 15 minutes. So this mix between personal and professional, formal and informal, and strict time management, it gives you the structure communication. I will skip this one. It is essential if you do breakout rooms to have 3 roles. I can, please bug me on that. And 4 level of collaboration. It is important, virtual collaboration, particularly now in the new normal. Clear here is to set a clear expectation of the purpose of the meeting and the level of contribution. And online also gives you a lot of opportunity to do a preparation. For example, for decision making, you as a manager can write a blog, list the key options, list the pros and cons, and let people, give them 24 hours to respond. So by their responses, you will see, you will prepare the decision. You will have a lot more engaged, and we know that engaging manager is 4 times kind of more effective to tackle burnout, and then have a clear expectation on the level of contribution. Home office tips. Let me give you one tip. I was in Bali speaking on an event, Bali, the digital nomads capital, and 500 people in the room, they asked the question, what is the number one skill to lead remote workers? And people were by Slido giving input, and then the bigger responses, they got bigger. And then in the end, the number one skill for leading remote workers was over communicate, which means may sound negative. Give them not just the task, give them the bigger context, give them the big why we do what we do, give them the goal that they need to achieve, not just the task. So give them the bigger context, over communicate. And the second aspect of it is make sure they understand. Ask questions to rephrase, make sure they understand what you mean. Number one now for leading your remote workers. And if there is a secret for leading a family of 6 women, a wife and 5 girls, it is praise, praise, praise. Praise the result if there's a result. If no result yet, but they help each other, praise the behavior. If neither result nor behavior, look harder. There is always something to praise, and it applies to virtual teams big time. Now, this is the 1 billion euro. I will go briefly. I see the time is running out. Fast-moving consumer goods. Chinese traders were buying their goods in 6 countries, Australia, Germany, France, and so on, and putting them on Alibaba. Vice President Business Development asked the general managers to get together, accumulate the volume, and do a deal with Alibaba. 1 year passed, no results, so he decided to have a project and a team with a strong culture. There were 12 people on the project team, 10 different nationalities. We cracked it down in Amsterdam in 1-day workshop on 3 scales: leadership, hierarchical versus egalitarian. So on one side, you ask for permission, and on the other, you're expected to be proactive. So I asked them to pick the position which is the optimal for the team. So they debated and they said, until we reach project mandate, we will be more egalitarian, where is the star. But when we reach project mandate, we will give it to the Chinese and now go on and deliver. So we will become more hierarchical. And that was the aha moment. Then we contemplated, how can I support this, the chosen culture, the optimal culture, because for Chinese, it's a big stretch, and how our leader can enable it. And based on that, we did it also on decision scale, top-down versus consensual, and confrontational versus non-confrontational, which for some Asian people is an issue. And by choosing the optimal virtual culture, by reflecting and committing, to support it, people hold each other peer accountable. You cannot impose the culture from the top, but you can make it live in such a way. Now, virtual power teams formula is P plus V plus I divided by S. P is personality, as we said, put personality in focus. You could work with the best, but it's not a guarantee of success. All-star teams seldom win. So vision, define the nucleus as a team. Intimacy, a bit tricky, not innovation. Have formats for people to connect on a heart-to-heart level. And then divided by S, the less, the better, self or ego. So if in some multinationals, managers have hidden agenda, but if you define the team bottom up, from the bottom, and you have a lot of recognition, you don't have to develop your agenda. You could work on the big one. Winning Spirit is a great story with appealing price to outstanding performance. This is where, we delivered 3 months early. I was nearly in a burnout trying to tell people what to do, but luckily discovered. It's a great story, which I don't have the time. It's key that if you set appealing price in a virtual teams, particularly global, go for a visual. We said that if we reach our goal 3 months early, we'll go to Tenerife. And that was the visual. Now, I started with a space journey. Let me go back to the universe just for 1 second. Do you know that in the universe, only 10% is material? 10% are planets and stars. 20% is like nothing, black holes or phenomena that still cannot be explained. And 70%, the major part, is invisible energy, like the gravity that holds the universe together. So in virtual team is quite similar. 10% are the team members and the infrastructure. 20% are undeveloped potentials, and 70% are the relationships, the trust, that gravity that holds the virtual team together. So the art to lead virtual teams is to focus on the 70%, and I assure you will be amazed by the wonderful fruits to come. Let me conclude with 1 sentence which has guided me through the years, and it goes like this. If you dream alone, this is just a dream. If we people dream together, this is the beginning of a new reality. Thank you very much. There were no times for questions, but feel free to reach out to me by email or LinkedIn. We'll be happy to cover all the questions.
Mr. Peter, your creativity is unbelievable. Thank you so much. We enjoyed that. Really did.
My pleasure. My honor.
Depth with the talks and your metaphors and all of that is pretty creative. Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, sir, it's a blessing and an honor to have you with us here on this conference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir?
Good luck with your event.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.